Welcome to Hope for Your Pelvic Floor, the podcast where honest conversation meets real, evidence based solutions for your pelvic health. I'm Claire Sparrow, second generation Pilates teacher, educator, and best selling author. I'm here to help you understand your body better, move with confidence, and finally get the answers that make sense. Each week, we'll bust myths, share insights from movement science and pelvic health research, and give you practical steps you can actually use in your everyday life. Because pelvic health isn't just about exercises, it's about reconnecting with yourself. One breath, one choice, and one movement at a time. Let's get started. So today's topic I am really excited about because it's the beginning of a series that I'm going to share with you on pelvic organ prolapse. And I mean, it's a bit sad really because I am very excited because June is always Pelvic Organ Prolapse Awareness Month, or POP month for short. So I revel in this opportunity to educate and share and give women the information about prolapse that they may not already have. So as we're coming up to June, I thought I would begin this series today with a real sort of introduction into what prolapse actually is. But before we get into today's main topic, I wanted to start with a little bit of a check-in, and a Claire shares at the little beginning of our episode. This is a new piece that I'm going to introduce, and it's really just general takeaways, things that I've been thinking about, anything that I think, oh, everybody needs to know about this particular bit of information. And this week, I've really been thinking a lot about the pelvic health. We had a retreat, the pelvic health retreat. It sounds so funny to call it a pelvic health retreat, but anyway, that's what it is. I do two different types of pelvic health retreat, and one is a sort of crash course intensive into learning about your pelvic health. But my thoughts around it were more around the resounding theme, no matter which pelvic health retreat I do, where the women have come from in the world to join us. And the resounding theme is always around, why hasn't anybody explained it like this before? This makes so much sense. And what they're talking about is the whole body pelvic health method, the method that I've been creating and cultivating and improving upon all the time for, really, when I think about it, my whole career in Pilates, but mainly in the last kind of 10 years. And what's so pivotal to the women that join me is that they really honestly get it. They get it, it makes sense, they have a why behind it, and therefore they're more plugged into it. They're more able to go ahead and do something, and that gains empowerment. When something makes sense to you, you can do something with it. That is so empowering. And that's the thing that I've been really thinking about, is when I'm teaching and the work that we're doing together, it's really not just about the exercises, it's about how that makes you then feel. It's how it gives you ownership and autonomy over your body and your life. So this is the little thing that I have been thinking about for the last week, really, is just that resounding theme of, this just makes so much sense. Why has nobody told me it like this before? And hopefully over the coming weeks, when it comes to pelvic organ prolapse, I can help to give you that same sort of insight, that it just all makes sense and you're empowered with something to do about it. So, in this series, we're in season 2 now, and we haven't done a little themed series before. So, I'm hoping that by breaking down pelvic organ prolapse over the next few weeks, you will get that sense of empowerment. So, let's get stuck into what pelvic organ prolapse actually is. So, in this episode, I'm going to help you to understand what it is, what the symptoms are, and what it really feels like when you have a symptom. And then what are the different types of prolapse? Because it's not just one generic thing. What are the different types? And a little bit around what are the sorts of things that may cause a prolapse. And then in the further episodes, we'll look at some real specifics about the different types, what you can do, the sorts of exercises that might help, might hinder, that sort of thing. So let's get stuck into what pelvic organ prolapse is. So I know that I'm not the only one. We all do it. We get on Google, we get a diagnosis for something, or somebody tells us about something, and we go on to Google, what is pelvic organ prolapse? And you are going to get some hideous response in bold at the top of your search that will say something like, pelvic organ prolapse is a dropped or fallen organ because of weak pelvic floor muscles. Grr. It is not. It is so much more complicated than that. It is such a basic and very negative way of looking at it. I go into great detail about this in my book, Hope for Your Pelvic Floor. Quick little promo here. The audiobook is coming really soon, so look out for that. But I talk about why language around prolapse is so important, because we're fed this really negative dialogue around pelvic organ prolapse. So if it's not dropped or fallen and it's not because of weak pelvic floor muscles, we need to understand really what that is. So first of all, what organs are we even talking about here? All right, so we're talking about the bladder. All right, so we're talking about the uterus, and we're talking about the rectum. What's actually happening is one or more of those organs are starting to displace. So it's not that they've just gone drop like you fill your bag at the supermarket too full and the seam breaks and everything falls on the floor. It's not like that, because our pelvic floor is not like a bottom of a bag designed to hold everything up from underneath. And in any case, a bag is actually being held up by you holding the handles, creating tension for the items to be suspended in. So if we use that analogy, and we'll talk about this more in future episodes, it's actually from above, not from below, that our organs are held up. Yes, the pelvic floor does play a role. It doesn't play the only role in the support of your organs. And that's where the definitions and the treatment and the common understanding has got us all doing the wrong thing, because it's not how it actually works. So if you're only trying to strengthen the bottom of the shopping bag, and you're not looking at the handles, and you're not looking at what's holding the handles up, then it's a fail right from the beginning. You're set up to fail. And that infuriates the living daylights out of me, because the number of women that I've worked with prolapse where they feel like they are failing, their body's failing, or they failed and they've done it wrong. And actually, it's not the case. We're just being given the wrong information in the first place. We're looking at it in the wrong way from the first place, because it's actually things like the fascia and the ligaments above that are helping to hold the organ in an ideal position. The other thing about displacement, so I much prefer to call it pelvic organ displacement, because it's our organs are meant to move about all the time. And if it's something is displaced, it can be replaced. It can help to be, you can help it to be relocated again. And think about it this way, your bladder fills and empties, fills and empties. You have a bowel movement, so your rectum fills and empties. We are designed to shape shift all the time, but we have this perception from the way that we're taught and things are explained to us and from Google, that we are meant to just be in this fixed state all the time. But when we think of the logic, and this is what I was saying in my Claire shares, is that women, when they hear this explanation, they're just like, well, this just is so logical, it makes so much sense. This needs to make sense to you so that you can understand how to manage and move forwards. You may not even have a prolapse. You might have no symptoms, and still, let's be informed, because you can support other people in your life and you can be informed for your future self as well. So, oh my gosh, I feel like I've gone on a tangent, but prolapse, that is what prolapse really is. It's the displacement of an organ, and it's displaced because the handles, the bag, the bottom of the bag, using that analogy again, the sides of the bag, the person holding the bag, all of the elements are out of balance rather than just the floor, the bottom of the bag being weak. So hopefully that helps to clear up what prolapse really is. It's also important to say that 1 in 2 women have pelvic organ prolapse. That increases later in life, and I think that probably there's a lot of women that don't report, that don't, that aren't included in all this research, because honestly, we don't really know the symptoms. So we'll talk a little bit about what those symptoms actually are. And I also think, because I'm a very positive person, very optimistic and resourceful, that I want you to know that it is that common, and take that as a positive bit of information rather than panic and fear, because I'm here to hold your hand and support you along the way. It's totally manageable. Certain degrees of prolapse we can completely reverse. Some we're working on reducing, some we're working on managing the symptoms. It really is not the end of your active, joyful, happy life. It is education, it's information, it's a way of understanding more about yourself. So, we're just not taught that, are we? We're just keeping quiet. We're not necessarily sharing the symptoms we might be experiencing and just kind of brushing it under the carpet, or, not seeking out the help that we might actually benefit from. So here we are. We've gone, right, this is what it is. What are the symptoms then? Like, how would you know, just sitting here or out for your walk or listening in the car, whatever, how would you sense, how would you sense if you maybe had something going on? So one of the common things that people will say is that they have a kind of bulging feeling in the vagina, maybe like something's falling out or pushing. Often it can be described as being like a tampon is stuck, or there's some tissue stuck. Maybe it's a feeling of there being like an extra fleshy bit somewhere that wasn't there before. So it's a kind of overall sense of something being where it shouldn't be. Another way of describing it, another way that people identify symptoms, is a kind of heaviness or dragging feeling. And it's not always in the vagina itself. Sometimes it can be towards the front of your pelvis, around where your pubic bone is, or just above there. Sometimes it is in the vagina, a real drag and pull feeling, especially after standing for a long time. So if you stand for work, or you've been at a concert and afterwards you think, gosh, I really feel this heavy dragging feeling, that might be a symptom, a sign for you of prolapse. Some of the less common, or they are common, but they're less associated. You might not think this has something to do with my pelvic floor, let alone prolapse, is often there's a deep, like an ache or a pain into the hip. So at the side of your hip, like kind of into your bum at the side, or down into your groin at the front, a real ache in there. And also into the sacrum, you know, at the back of your pelvis, so right at your very lower back before you get to your tailbone at the bottom, the sacrum is in there, and it can get really achy and painful. And these are particular symptoms that I think most women don't consider relating to their pelvic floor, let alone pelvic organ prolapse. So these are important to notice. And then when it comes to, bowel and bladder, you might start to feel like with your bowel, you're not able to completely empty. It feels like something needs to go, but it's not quite gone yet. It might feel like there's something a bit stuck. It might feel like your rectum is a little bit stuck. It might be that you actually need to help yourself to manually remove the last bits of your bowel movement. You might need to press on your perineum to help to release the bowel movement. And then with bladder, you might find that you're having little leaks or dribbles. Often with prolapse, it's less about incontinence per se. That might be a separate thing, but sometimes there's leaks, that little dribble that happens. You stand up and a little bit more comes out, and that can be to do with the organ being in the way. When you're sitting down and then you stand up, things move and that last bit of urine can pass. These are the most common ones, and also ones that you might not. I'm saying common, and I feel kind of slightly apologetic because even although they're common, you probably don't know. And I want you to give yourself real grace for that, because I had the deep hip and groin pain and had no idea. So I speak from my own experience here. So that's the general symptoms that you might experience. And then we've got to look at, well, what are the different types? Because it's really important to understand. I have so many women who'll come and they'll say, I've got prolapse, and believe it's just a general thing. And actually, it's quite specific, and how I would tailor the exercise and movement program would be quite different depending on what prolapse you had. So you've got cystocele, which is your bladder prolapse. So that's when the bladder is pressing and moving into the front wall of the vagina. And this is where there might be some urgency. You might feel like you're not fully emptying your bladder. So this is your cystocele, bladder prolapse. Then you've got rectocele. Rectocele, and the names, I mean, they do give you a hint. Rectum, rectocele, it's actually when the rectum is bulging into the back wall of the vagina. So you've got your bladder at the front, when you lie on your tummy and you go, oh, actually, I need to wee. That's because your bladder's at the front and you go, you've pressed on it, you've changed the space, the pressure, and then you need to wee. And then your rectum's at the back. It's going down inside the back of your sacrum, which is what we talked about before. That's just before your tailbone, so it's right at the lower part of your spine. And so often when you're feeling that ache in the sacrum, it's to do with a rectocele. And so it's bulging into or pressing or moving into the back wall of your vagina. And constipation can be a symptom and a cause, which it becomes a bit of a minefield. So if you're not getting enough fiber in your diet, if you're finding it difficult to pass, then do what you can to really make sure you're moving things through with ease, shall we say. And one of my favorite recommendations is to get a squatty potty. I don't have an affiliate or anything with them, but I just think they're amazing and everybody needs one. We even have them in the toilets at our studio, Chapel Allerton Pilates. We've got them everywhere. So I want people to celebrate and feel free to go when they need to go. So that's our rectocele. And then the last most common, there are others, but the last most common is the uterine prolapse. And this is when your uterus moves down into the vaginal canal. Okay, so we feel that pressure, we feel the sense of an extra bit of tissue in there, like we feel that there's something more fleshy in there. And it's the heavy dragging vaginal pressure that you're going to experience with the uterine prolapse. Sometimes it can also be the low back pain, and again, the pressure is the main thing. So this is the three most common types. These are the three that I see with women most commonly. Now, if those are, we've understood what it is, we've understand the key types and the symptoms, what kind of could we look at as the causes? I've already said that the constipation is a huge cause. We really need to get enough fiber and enough fluid. I cannot stress enough the importance of getting enough fluid in. It's so important. I recommend that you fill a flask before you go to bed with hot water, so when you wake up, you can drink warm water as soon as you wake up. When we drink cold water, it's like a shock to the system, and your body, it kind of closes down. And what we need is for our body to be nice and open so that we can absorb the water and actually hydrate. You can even put in a little bit of honey, or you can put in a little bit of really good quality organic sourced salt. That will help your body to absorb it. But I cannot tell you, it is absolutely vital, not just for constipation, but also for healing. So if you are working through any scar tissue, which moves us on to our next cause of prolapse, if you have any scar tissue from a birth injury or a surgery in or around the pelvis, that scar tissue needs the hydration to be able to heal, to be able to dissipate and melt away any of the excess unnecessary scar tissue. It will help the brain and body to communicate again more, and we'll talk about that in greater detail in a further episode. But the constipation, getting the hydration is really, really important. Scar tissue, the hydration for that again is really important because it's a huge cause of pelvic organ prolapse. Some of the other causes are hypertonic, so hyper tight, super strong and pulled in muscles, not just your pelvic floor itself, but your abdominal muscles. So if you're proudly boasting a six-pack, you might want to just check that it can actually lengthen out of that six-pack as well as fall back into it. The same with your pelvic floor and your glutes and the deep hip muscles. Really, really important that they can lengthen and not just be pulled in, pulled in, pulled in. And then we've also got the other side of it, because if you have a hypermobility condition, so if you have really, really lax tissue, then we talked about the shopping bag analogy, that really affects the ability of the handles, all the ligaments above, pulling the organ up. So that can also be a cause. Posture, huge influence over your pelvic floor, whether it's prolapse or incontinence or any general issues with your pelvic floor. Really, really important that we get ourselves out of the permanent chair shape that we're all in. Other issues are stress. Oh my goodness. And I know as I say it, you're all thinking, well, I'm always stressed. Stress is a real cause, and there's so many things that you can do, like improving your sleep routine, switching off your devices an hour before bed, all of these things that we know we should be doing, but actually are a big influence over our pelvic floor, pelvic health and function. So these are most of the causes of pelvic organ prolapse. Of course, we know that the risk increases during menopause because of the hormone changes. We've talked a little bit about that in previous episodes, which you can check out. So I hope that you feel informed and recognize that being informed actually is empowering. You don't need to panic or freak out. So we have the information. It means we can do something about it. So our takeaways today are: breathe. You have more information, therefore more power. Look after yourself. So you really need to take some time out to just pause and think about your pelvic floor. And the next step of that would be to look. Actually get a mirror out and look at your pelvic floor. Whether you have symptoms or not, it's really important that we get to know what we look like. What is the anatomy like down there? So you have a frame of reference. I made the suggestion to somebody at the studio this week and she went, oh, and I think that's a symptom of how we are being influenced in our society around this area of our body. It's yours. It's 100% yours. And if you take the time to get to know it and look at it, you will begin to have a better relationship with it. You will care for it more. You'll be empowered to ask for and speak up for your pelvic health because you have that greater ownership. I'm also going to put a link in the show notes to the Pelvic Floor Disability Index form. This is a standardized form. We use it in research, we use it in our membership so that you can assess and get really clear about what your symptoms might be, if you have any symptoms, and feel free to share that with anybody else you know. It's freely available that might be able to benefit from doing that. If you think you see something, if you think you feel something, I'd urge you to get a formal diagnosis. It's not about going somewhere and getting a treatment plan or anything like that right now. Just go ahead and find out the facts. What are you dealing with? Often women will come and they'll feel like, and I'm saying this because this was me too, it feels so big and so bad, and then you get a diagnosis and it's maybe a lot less than you think. So I would urge you to just get the facts. And then the last thing is, I'm going to put another link below in the show notes for you to sign up for free to Pelvic Organ Prolapse Awareness Month. I'm going to go through all of this in much more depth. I'm going to give you free classes that you can do for the specific types of prolapse so that whatever you're dealing with, you know that you have the right tools to support yourself and feel empowered to do so. So it's really, really common. It can be helped, and I am on a mission, as you can tell, to help. In the next episode, I'll explain why the traditional medical model of treatment doesn't work and what you can do instead. So if you're ready now, you can sign up to the Prolapse, the POP month, and I will hopefully see you there. We start really soon. So thank you as always for tuning in to Hope for Your Pelvic Floor. If this episode has resonated with you, please subscribe, leave a review and share it with someone who needs it. It really helps more women find the support they deserve. For deeper support, head to wholebodypelvichealth.co.uk to explore the membership. You can ask for more for your pelvic floor, and I'll be here with you by your side, your voice of hope every step of the way.